Hi, welcome. My name is Tommy Enolis. I'm one of the co-founders here at Ops Analytica. We have we call it an operational excellence platform. We primarily focus on working with multi-location businesses, providing them with a platform where they can build customized brand audits, inspections, and checklists, and pretty much any form that they need to create to solve a business case within their company. And I'm really excited to have you guys join me today so that we can discuss why checklist programs succeed or fail, right? Because checklists are some of the most effective, easy to use, cheapest to implement tools that we have available to us as human beings today to make sure that whatever we're working on, that we don't miss any steps and that everything is right um, in the process. And yet we find that a lot of our clients and prospects, they come to us because they weren't getting the ROI that they wanted out of their checklist program. So let's jump into it. First thing we're going to start off with here is a quote from Atul Gawande, the author of the Checklist Manifesto. Great book. It is a really interesting, great business book that I highly recommend you pick up on Audible or get a hard copy of it. It's a quick read. Atul's a great author. He's a Harvard surgeon. He did a ton of research. And unlike most business books where the first third tells you some concept and then the next two thirds just regurgitate it, this book is interesting from start to finish, right? And he draws several conclusions about the efficacy of checklists in the book. And I think this is a great quote. The volume and complexity of what we know has exceeded our individual ability to deliver its benefits correctly, safely, or reliably. Right? So what he's saying here is that life today is so much more complicated than it was 50 years ago, right? And I use an example of restaurants in this case, right? Which is, think about that show Alice that used to be on in the late 70s, early 80s. It was Mel's Diner, and the the waitresses walked around with little paper pads and they ripped their tickets off and they just put them in up on the wheel, and then Mel made the food. And it was just there was no POS system, there was no printers, there was no menu boards, there was no online delivery. Like that was a very simple operation, right? Portrayed on that television show versus a restaurant today where, you've got 20 or 30 different programs that you're using to manage your business. Each one of them was set up to make you more successful, but each one of them makes the job that much more complicated. It makes the process that much more complicated. And that's what we're talking about here. It's just that with all this technology that's going on, what's happening is that, and just general operations today, regulations, you name it, everything's more complicated today. And you need a tool, a reference guide, if you will, a checklist to help you keep track of all the details, right? And this is a point he makes that's really a big deal. And the point is that um, it doesn't it doesn't matter if you're a 15-year-old kid who's closing a Baskin Robbins the first time on a Sunday night, or you're a neurosurgeon, like with 20 years of training and all this experience and all this education. Both of those people can equally benefit from a checklist. And the reason for that is that we have a limitation in our brain. We can only keep 3 to 5 steps of a process in our current brain memory at any given time. And the brain is not good at dealing with details, right? And so that's why the checklist is such a powerful tool that can be utilized within your business or your life, because it allows you to keep track of all those details and ensure that you don't miss any steps, right? Um, and just having that visual aid, something you can reference while you're doing a multi-step process, is so huge. And I see this in my own life. And I've been working on checklists and running audit programs and building this software since pretty much 2009. And, there'll be times, excuse me, where I'll skip using a checklist. And invariably, every time I do that, I miss something that's important, right? And I'm like, I know a ton about this stuff, and I still fall into the same trap that everybody else does, where I'm like, I got it. Everything was right yesterday. Everything will be right today. And every time I do, it bites me in the butt. So having a checklist program in place and framing it in the proper way, which is that we're not, as humans, good at managing long lists of steps that we have to do. I don't care how many times you've done it. And that this is a reference tool for you. It's a helper guide, right? To make sure that if you just follow it, you're not going to miss anything, and you're going to have a better outcome every time. We also see that doing checklists have real business ROIs associated to them. Not just better operations, which you're going to get, right? Not just better readiness, and not, if you're using a platform like Ops Analytica, great data that you can use to make data-driven decisions. But this also affects the bottom line. And this is actual stats from one of our clients. They looked at 50 stores that they had, and they compared the top checklist compliance, top 75, the top 25% that do 75% or more of their checklist, to the bottom 25%. And those stores had 5% higher sales and 90% higher customer satisfaction. And that's because they're just better managed. And you can make a case, well, maybe it's the manager, not the checklist. But I would tell you that those two things go hand in hand, right? Better managers utilize systems to be great. Systems help managers be better, right? So you can't really make they work together to be more successful, and it pays off on the bottom line. And especially if this is a restaurant, the restaurant industry is really struggling right now. So if you could just pick up 5% more sales and 90% better customer satisfaction by just holding your teams accountable to following your processes and procedures properly, I mean, that's a huge, easy win to get more profits and sales into your business, right? So the ROI of a successful checklist program is increased readiness, increased safety and compliance, and then ultimately that should lead to better customer experiences, which leads to increased sales and profitability, right? So that's how we judge the success of a checklist program. Now, when we talk to clients and we talk to prospects for the platform, what people tell us all the time that they want is more visibility and more accountability from their stores. And then ultimately the data that comes along with that, so that when you do need to make a hard decision, you can get real data to help you back that decision up, and you don't just have to go off your hunches, which are oftentimes wrong. Now, the silent killer of most checklist programs is pencil whipping, right? And pencil whipping is essentially you open up a checklist and you just go, done, 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 yes, 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 and then you finish, right? And every one of our clients, pencil whipping is the scourge of their business. And it's super frustrating for them, right? Because, first of all, in my opinion, I would rather you not do the checklist at all than fill the checklist or fill the database with just a bunch of lies and fake data, right? But it's very frustrating for the clients because they're doing everything right. You know what I mean? They're going out and they're identifying issues that are within their business that they know if we don't handle this, it affects, safety, readiness, customer satisfaction, all those things. So we've identified those things. We've invested into a checklist system, and we've trained all of our teams out in the field about the importance of all of these items and how they affect your business. And they've done everything right, but then the people at the store level just blow them off and just, pencil whip the thing. And it's so frustrating for corporate because you're like, well, we can't do any more for you. like we did this correctly. You need to step up and do your part of the job and do your job and ensure these things are right so that we take care of our customers and we have good sales profits and a healthy business. And so pencil whipping, once again, is when people go through and just fill out a checklist, but they don't actually check any of the items on the list. Now, with Ops Analytica, we have the most powerful business logic engine in the world. And so we've actually invented a concept called data accuracy scoring. And what that allows us to do is use our business logic to grade the checklist as it's being completed. And then we can tag the checklist, the completed checklist, with accurate or not accurate. And then those tags can be used in reporting, and it can allow you to filter your data based off of what your goal is. And both the accurate data and the not accurate data, they actually add tremendous value to your business. The accurate data is really good for making data-driven decisions. The not accurate data, the data that was deemed maybe pencil whipped or whatever, that data is really great for coaching and identifying who needs coaching, right? So data accuracy scoring is just a cool concept that we have at Ops Analytica, and I highly recommend that if you're interested in starting a checklist program, we're the only ones who can do this. And come and have a call with us and we'll tell you about it, because it's a pretty powerful thing that really makes your data quality much better. So another feature that's going to be released here very shortly, I just want to mention it really quickly, is OpsPhotoAnalyzer. And the OpsPhotoAnalyzer is essentially we're the first company to have this, like in the checklist, audit, inspection vertical, if you will. And essentially, one of the biggest problems, one of the main reasons why people struggle to get these checklist programs working is because it's because what happens is, for you to have a successful checklist program you need to hold people accountable, right? And like everybody knows, if you're giving feedback, it needs to be timely and accurate, and the whole SMART feedback acronym, if you will. But the problem has always been is that when you're running a multi-location business, there isn't the manpower or the money to assign people to sit there and babysit the stores and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing right. And that's probably the biggest failure point. Like, if you just boil it all down, like, the pencil whipping is part of that, but it comes down to, we're just not staffed and we don't have the budget to put a person who's just literally hounding people to do things correctly in real time every day. And so the photo analyzer is the first feature that to be deployed on any checklist platform that can actually hold people accountable in real time. And so how it works is like this, right? You set up the questions in your checklist as you're building your checklist. You put the photo question in. By the way, the photo question type requiring a photo to be taken is the single best question type that you would put in a checklist to hold people accountable, because it forces them to take a photo right then and there with their mobile device's camera, right? So much better than temperature, capturing numbers, or true false questions. It's the one that offers the most accountability. And so what happens is you build the question, you set some criteria on the question on how you want the AI to judge the photo. A good best practice is to put what we call a golden rule photo in the question text, so that the person who's taking the picture at the location can see what you want the picture to look like and explain to them what the picture is being graded on. But then as soon as the picture is taken, they hit OK. We send that picture off to AI. We send your business criteria with it. The AI judges the picture in real time. And within a couple of seconds, 5-6 seconds, it comes back and it tells you what the picture was, a pass or a fail, right? So essentially what we're able to do is we're able to tell people when something's not right in real time. And then you can set the question up in such a way where if they do get a failed picture, we can tell them, hey, read the description why the AI failed your picture, fix that, and then take another picture, and we can require them to have a past photo to submit their checklist. And so essentially, what we're getting here is we're getting real time AI analysis as the checklist is happening. We're able to drive real behavior change, right? With the ROI of a checklist being that we get people to fix issues and we get them to make sure things are correct. This is doing this for us at the moment it's happening at the source, so we can drive real time behavior change. And then also, the AI has no skin in this game. It's just going to tell you accurately why the picture didn't pass, right? And so you're going to get way better data because you're not able to pencil whip it because the AI is the one answering the question for you, essentially saying, no, this picture failed because of X, Y, and Z. So OpsPhotoAnalyzer is the first time that I think that checklist programs can deliver to the clients the kind of return that they really want to get. Other benefits of it are you can look at 3 or 4 or 5 things in one photo, right? You can set it up so that like you can save money in other ways. Like on daily checklists, that's a person out in the store, right? Taking those pictures, showing you things are great. But there are other things that big multi-location businesses do. They do inspections. They do, brand standards audits a lot of times. And in those use cases, what you have right now is a person from corporate, a very expensive person from corporate, traveling to those stores, spending hours in those stores, going around doing these inspections, doing these audits, and it's very expensive for the brands. And now you are in a position where you can have the person at the store complete those audits for you, complete those inspections for you using AI Photo Analyzer. And then you can just review the answers after they're done, and you can focus your resources and save money on travel and focus your field teams and your district managers to go spend time in the stores that need the most help. And maybe the best stores, you just leave them alone a little bit more. If they pass the inspection because the AI said they passed it, then hey, don't spend as much time there and really move the needle on your sales, profits, and operations. So this is going to be huge for not just checklists, but for inspections and brand standards audits as well. Right? I kind of already went over the babysitting part for your stores, but just to recap it, the only way you're going to pull a checklist program through successfully and get accurate data and the return you want is to hold your teams accountable in real time to doing what they're supposed to do. Most organizations are not staffed for that, but we can shuffle that babysitting off onto the AI and let the AI do this. And now you as the client, the purchaser of this program, are going to start to get the results that you've always dreamed of getting from your checklists. This is the first time in the history of the world where that's actually capable without needing a human in the loop. But there are other things you can do in addition to having Photo Analyzer that can also make your checklist program more successful. And I want to go over, these are all, the next couple of slides, these are all things that we see our clients doing in their businesses, and it's paying dividends for them. And so I would suggest that, if you joined us and you got Photo Analyzer, that's great. I would also do the things that I'm going to touch on here on the next couple of slides because it's just going to make your program better, right? The first thing I would tell you is every one of our clients that is really getting a huge ROI out of the platform and out of their checklist program, they have a huge why, right? A why that is part of their culture. And so you have to figure out what your why is, right? Like, and it's got to be meaningful, and it should permeate not just your checklist program, but it should permeate your culture of your business. we do these things because we want to be X, Y, and Z, right? It's, you know, this is why we're here. This is why we do this, right? Um, and so that why should permeate your training. It should permeate all your procedures. It should permeate your checklists and your checklist compliance. It should just be part of your audits. It's it's a cultural, it's a deeply held cultural belief within your business, right? And I think, you know, you probably already have it, and you just need to really call it out and associate it to all the different little things that you do on a daily basis. I would also say that when you're talking about the why, you know, especially if you're talking to store level employees, right? It can't be about sales and profits because store level employees don't generally get a big cut of those. You know what I mean? I mean, they might get some bonuses here and there and stuff, but in general, they're not getting, that's not going to drive their why. So, just as a side note, when you're trying to train this into the store level employees that are doing the checklist, you know, you want to make sure the why makes sense for them. So, spend some time, get on AI, and try to figure out how do you communicate this to that store level employee where it matters to them, because making a bunch of rich people richer, it doesn't drive behavior at the store level. So, you know, and this is just an example there, but like maybe, you know, when you do your checklist, you have easier shifts and funner days, or, you know, you get more parties, or your bonus goes up, or whatever it might be, right? But just try to focus, especially when talking to store level employees that don't make your why sales and profits, and even safety to some extent too, because, you know, safety, even though it's a big deal, and food safety or compliance, whatever, you know, that doesn't get people motivated. You got to talk to them, and you got to put in incentives, and just talk to them about how it's going to make their life easier, because that's what they care about. Another thing you can do, we've got a lot of very successful clients, um, and you know, corporate owned multi-location businesses and franchise businesses who use their audits, their quarterly or monthly audits, even third-party auditors, to confirm checklist compliance. This is just an easy way to kind of babysit the the stores without having to do it in real time every day, which is like impossible for people to do. And so we have a lot of internal auditors and third party auditors that are trained to go into Ops Analytica, and then review the data from the reports to see that the store is getting their stuff done at the frequency and the compliance level that they need to be getting it done by. And you can set thresholds and say, well, like out of the last 30 days, you need to have, you know, X amount of these things done, you know, or a percentage or accounts, whatever you want to do. And, you know, with our report filters, you can build a report filter that, you know, goes to every store, so that when an auditor comes in, they can literally navigate to one report and click a report filter, and it just always gives them the exact data they need to review in like a couple of clicks, right? So super powerful way to do it. But use those audits, those monthly, quarterly, third party audits, to get into Ops Analytica, look at the data, and hold those people accountable, right? Another thing you can do is you can add checklist compliance and audit compliance to your bonus equation. So I'm just talking as an example about restaurants here. A lot of restaurant managers get bonus based off of sales, food costs, labor costs, maybe paper costs, maybe customer satisfaction scores coming out of their customer SAT program. It's really easy and very smart to add checklist compliance and audit scores into your bonus structure. And that way, it managers are getting, you know, they're getting an actual financial incentive to do the right thing. And this is it's kind of another babysitting thing that you don't have to do every day, you know, every minute of the day. It kind of just shows up on a monthly or quarterly basis. So very easy thing for you to do is just change how you structure your bonuses and add those KPIs into the bonus mix. and just see if that doesn't start to drive the better behavior you're expecting. We have one client who they have very strict food safety standards. And what they do is they know that they do a food safety log 5 times a day, and they have created a missed checklist report. And so they have some rules around that. If you miss one of those 5 food safety logs every day, then you have to, within 24 hours of missing that scheduled checklist, you've got to fill out a missed checklist report. And it's simply, you go in, you pick the checklist, you pick the schedule you missed, you give them, there's like a drop down list of reasons why you missed it, and then there's a free text field where they can type in what happened and what the deal was. And actually what happens with these guys, and so you have to submit that form within 24 hours, but then that also, when their auditor comes in and they look at all of the checklists they were supposed to do, let's say over the last 30 days, for every one that's missing on the report, they have to be able to pull up a subsequent missed checklist report. And if they have that, even though the person missed some of their scheduled temperature checks, they don't fail the question on the audit, because the missed checklist report shows that they've been diligent and they're documenting why the procedure wasn't followed. So this is a super easy way to just keep people accountable to doing their jobs. And so to wrap up this webinar today about making your checklist program successful, let's go back and just sort of recap the whole thing. First of all, checklists are the most effective, efficient, fast, easy to use tool we've ever invented as human beings, so that people can manage complex multi-step processes and essentially ensure everything is right in the process. And that the benefit, the ROI of a checklist program is increased readiness, safety, compliance, right? And then a secondary benefit is having really great data you can use to make decisions about how your business is functioning. Having a program, putting in place a program where you're holding people accountable to doing their checklists, right? Putting it into your bonus structure, putting it into your audits, ensuring that you have as much systematic structure around doing the checklist that incentivizes people to do them, and making sure that they understand the why behind them, and doing the training is so imperative to being successful with your checklist program. And then finally, with Ops Analytica, we are the first company in this space to be releasing our OpsPhotoAnalyzer, which is a real-time analysis of a picture that someone takes in the store, graded by AI. The AI tells them if it passed or failed, and it tells them why it failed. And then you can literally require them to fix the issue and take another photo to prove that it's fixed. And it's, for the first time ever, you're getting sort of a real-time digital babysitter holding your people accountable to doing what they need to do. And you're getting real-time behavior change. You're getting clean, accurate data. You're going to be able to shorten your checklists because they don't have to be as prescriptive, where you have 50 questions asking, well, is there lettuce in there? Is there salsa in there? You can literally just be like, hey, take a look at this. Tell me what's right. Tell me what's wrong. Let's move on. And this is going to be a game changer in the industry. And so, if you're looking to drive better operations, more consistent operations, you're looking to increase your sales, your profits, your customer satisfaction, checklists are a massive tool in that toolbox, probably the most effective and easiest to implement tool you have. And by following some of the things we talked about in this presentation, you can make that checklist program more successful. And then if you do decide to come over to Ops Analytica and implement OpsPhotoAnalyzer, you're going to see massive dividends paid in holding people accountable and changing their behavior in real time. I'm going to go here and look at the chat real quick on my other monitor, and I'm going to answer some questions that came up during the chat. Okay, so I got one question here. The question is, how do you implement that data accuracy scoring, right? Well, Ops Analytica has the most powerful business logic engine of all the forms checklist platforms. And it's a rule based system. And so, what we can do is we can essentially create rules that look at how questions are answered, looks at, you know, how long the checklist took, and all these other variables. And then we can analyze that data as the checklist is being submitted, and then we can simply use data accuracy scoring to grade if we believe, based on your business criteria, if the checklist was done accurately or not. And we generally just tag the responses, the response set, which is essentially the completed checklist, with an acronym like A for accurate, NA for not accurate. So nobody, like a third party inspector or anybody who looked at that, would know what A or NA meant. It would just be a thing that was on the top of the form. But that actually works within our reporting, and we can actually then filter the data based off if it was accurate or not accurate. And in our data accuracy scoring model, we also put in a reason code, another acronym in there as well too, to tell you why we said the form was not accurate, right? So data accuracy scoring is kind of like a revolutionary thing. And it's only made possible because we have such a powerful business logic engine. So that's how that works. And one of the cool things, I guess I'll just stay on business logic for a second before I get to the next question here. But OpsPhotoAnalyzer is so powerful, and its ability to judge these photos and to give you an accurate answer on whether they were good or bad, and explain exactly to the end user, the person filling out the checklist, if something was wrong, what it was wrong, so they can go in and fix it, is huge. But the combination of OpsPhotoAnalyzer and our business logic engine, because you can write any kind of business logic you want in there, together is such the sum of the parts, or the sum of, it's just so powerful. And it's like really two major feature sets that really nobody else has at this point. Other people have business logic, but they don't have a business logic engine that's rule based. Theirs is more hard coded into their systems. And it's a combination of those two things together that are going to literally change how people collect data from their field organizations. On one of the slides, it said that you guys generate ROIs in the thousands of percents. Can you explain that a little bit more? Yes, thank you. Good question. I didn't really touch on that too much, but it was on one of the slides I stopped on. When people hear that, they go, thousands of percent? Really? Okay, dude, you're lying. But you have to think about how our businesses operate, right? So we work with multi-location businesses, and oftentimes a lot of hospitality, a lot of like franchise and hospitality organizations. Those guys are open 363 days a year, right? Sometimes 365 days a year. And they have, let's say, 1,000 locations. So if you put in a check into a checklist or into an audit, and it identifies a wasted amount of money, right? Or some amount of waste, and that's happening once a day in 1,000 locations a day, and it's and it's $1 per location, and then you go, okay, well, we're identifying on average $1 of waste a day at 1,000 locations. That's $1,000 a day, and we're open 365 days a year. Well, all of a sudden you can see where you're getting a savings, a cost savings / profit boost of 365K a year. And so it ends up adding up. Small little things that you can catch and stop end up equaling huge amounts of money when you're operating in 1,000 locations, 365 days a year. And I'll give you two real world examples. We had 100 Pizza Huts operating in the Midwest, and they did a real time labor checklist where they essentially, at the slow periods, after lunch, before dinner, after dinner rush, they would force their managers to go into the register, pull a labor ratio out, stick that number into the checklist. The checklist would evaluate it, and then it would essentially, if the labor number was too high, it would tell the manager, hey, your labor number is too high. Is there a reason for this? And then they would be able to choose the reason, if there was an actual reason, or it would say, well, if you don't have a reason, you try to cut labor now because your sales have gone down, right? And if it was a failure, it would also notify their district manager. And what we were essentially enabling was reminding the manager to check their labor during the day, because in most systems you get a labor report the day after, first thing in the morning, that tells you what your labor percentage was yesterday, but you can't go back in time and fix your labor from the day before. So this was forcing these people, reminding them to catch the labor overages in real time and solve them day of, when you can actually affect the labor. And they, on average, were saving about 12K a year per store, and they had over 100 stores. And that's just getting a couple people off the clock an hour early, right? That's all it is. And like I said, when you have that many locations and you're open every day of the year, catching one person, or, catching one person on 1 hour here, 1 hour there, that's, $18 in a lot of cases that you can just save by just managing the business better. And that's what the checklist does. It helps you manage the business better, because it just reminds you to check things that you should check. We had another use case where we had a client who owned like 400 of their own stores, and they had a question on their checklist that was, have you confirmed that everybody has punched out at the end of the night? It was like the last question on the checklist, and originally it was a true false question, and people would just say yes. They would never take the time to go verify that people were actually punched out, and they would go home, and then every Monday they would get a report that was 15 pages long, 25 rows per page, of all the people that didn't punch out at night, and that basically got 2 more hours of pay. Let's assume, like the way they explained it was, let's assume it's a $30 cost for every row on that report for people who just didn't do because the manager just was like pencil whipping the question, right? And as soon as they implemented a photo question on that and made people take a picture of the monitor showing that everyone was punched out, they cut that report from 15 pages to 7 pages. It was like a $6,000 a week savings by just forcing people, once again, to do their job, reminding them to do their job, right? So that's how we've been able to generate these ROIs that are in the thousands of percents. I'm gonna address one more question here, and then I'm gonna wrap up this this webinar. So the next question is, you talked about babysitting. I don't understand that concept within the business. Can you kind of elaborate more on that? Yeah, of course. So if you're trying to pull any process through a large organization, right? And it was actually, what gets measured gets managed is one of the quotes here on one of the slides, right? If you're ever trying to pull any kind of process compliance or readiness or any business thing you're trying to do within a large organization, if you're not measuring it and you're not managing it and you're not giving real-time feedback on it and holding people accountable to following the procedure, you will fail, right? It's just that simple. And so when I bring up the concept of babysitting, what I'm talking about here is that really the only way to get people to do these checklists is to essentially put some supervisors above them and task them with babysitting their stores and ensuring all this stuff is getting done and getting done in real time, right? Because it doesn't do you any good if you come in once a quarter and be like, hey, 3 months ago, this guy didn't do his checklist. Like, no one can do anything about that. Like, if you really want to pull an initiative through, you've got to hold people accountable in real time. And that requires essentially babysitting, right? And the analogy I use is everyone who has a kid at one point has told that kid, hey, go upstairs and clean your room. And then they come down 2 minutes later and they're back watching TV and they're like, room's clean. And then you walk up there and you're like, wait, crap, it is clean. How did they do this? Then you open their closet door and all their dirty clothes and clean clothes and toys and books, puzzles, they're all thrown on the floor in their closet. And you physically have to get them, bring them up to their room, sit on their bed, and babysit them while they literally put all their stuff away correctly. And that's the same concept that you really need to do to pull these programs through in your business. But the problem is, multi-location businesses, franchises, corporate-owned businesses, nobody has the time or the money. They don't have the time. The employees don't have the time. The business doesn't have the money to add this other giant layer of babysitters in place. And also, babysitting sucks. And so the people that would do the babysitting can always find a reason to do something else that they believe is more important to the business's health than babysitting. And so their checklist program doesn't give them the ROI that they wanted to get out of it, which was the better operations and the data and everything that goes with the better ops, right? And so that's what I'm talking about babysitting. That's what I'm saying. Like, you need to have all those other things I mentioned, but there's got to be a level of real-time accountability where we're holding people accountable to doing things correctly. And that's where the OpsPhotoAnalyzer comes in. Because for the first time in the history of checklists, and especially of checklist platforms, we've engineered something that can do that babysitting for you without a human in the loop in real time. And so we can actually get the ROI of having a checklist program. We can actually get that into our business. And we're leaning on the AI, the digital babysitter, to do it. So my name's Tommy Inolis. I'm one of the co-founders here at Ops Analytica. If you're interested in learning more about our platform, about Photo Analyzer, about just if you want to discuss what you're doing with checklists and just get a sense of maybe we can help you or not, there's a chat on the website. You can just open up the chat and start chatting, and then we can get a meeting scheduled where we can sit down and just talk about what you're doing and what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve with no pressure, right? We'll just have a nice conversation, and we'll figure out what you're doing. And if we're a good fit for you, great. If we're not and we can help you out, great. So thank you so much, guys, for coming to the webinar today. And once again, go to opsanalytica.com